Hare Krishna, welcome to Canto 2 Srimad Bhagavatam class number 4. We're going to be jumping into chapter 4, the process of creation. Do it with everyone. Start with some kirtan.
Oh, Haribol, sweet soul, so happy to be here with you this beautiful night. The tail end of flower garlands over here at the Bhakti House. Beautiful service. Let's take a deep breath in together. Sip it in, sip it in. Open your mouth, exhale, let it go. Twice more like that. Inhale, sip the breath in, fresh air. Exhale, relax your shoulders, open your mouth, release your jaw, let go of any tension. One more, inhale. Inhale. Exhale. Let's honor our teachers, this lineage of teachers, for all of the mercy, the blessings, the light of knowledge they've gifted us. We open our hearts with gratitude, with humility. Where would we be without our teachers? Sip the breath in. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Haribol.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare Krishna,
Om Ajnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Hare all right. We read the very beautiful chapter 3 last time. Pure devotional service, the change in heart. Lots of really nice verses and ideas, and we had some nice reflections in chat. So for those who weren't in the WhatsApp chat or haven't checked it in the last few minutes, please refresh us on what you shared there, or what you heard there, or anything just that's in your heart that you had. Reflections around your readings, the purports, the discussion, or comments or questions before we jump into chapter 4. Rini.
I look back at my notes, and I really liked how you said it. A teacher is an instrument to purifying. I'm not sure if you said it or if it was written, but I was taking notes so fast. But I find that really beautiful, actually. So I wanted to thank you for helping to purify my heart.
Hare Krishna. Well, I'm just trying to put myself. When you're holding the fire hose, you also get wet. So I'm trying to get purified too. It's like we're hearing about this, that Shukadeva and Parikshit Maharaj, they have the speaker and the listener, but both are getting transcendentally enlivened by the process. It's not different. So right back at you. Yeah, instrument for purification. I don't remember saying that, but maybe, and maybe Srila Prabhupada said that, but it's definitely true. It's coming up a lot because it's all about this conversation between Parikshit and Shukadeva, and understanding that Parikshit, he knows he's going to leave his body, he's accepted that, and so he's really just humbling, inquiring, and Krishna sends him this teacher, and in terms of like, what is the best thing for me to do with the time that I have left? Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
All right. Any more? More reflections, questions, reflections, comments.
I was just thinking that it really is important that you have a bona fide teacher such as yourself and Kishori. There's so many stories of, pseudo gurus, not in bhakti, but in other places that can sometimes lure us and fool us into a place of really, not being in a great place. But in bhakti, there's so many great teachers, and we are very fortunate to have so many great teachers.
We certainly are. Yeah, we have a wealth of teachers. We have maps and guides and gurus, and we're very, very blessed that way. And many who are still on the planet, and those who are a little more advanced than us, those who are very, very advanced, and we have like the writings. In this chapter, we're going to get into Shukadeva and Parikshit in their conversation, and Parikshit asks his teacher some questions, and Shukadeva demonstrates his qualification as a teacher. He says, actually, what you're asking comes up at the end of this chapter. What you're asking has already been asked before in a conversation between Narada and Brahma. Narada Muni, the great Narada Muni, who we've heard so much about, he appears, he's maybe the most famous person in the whole Bhagavatam outside of Krishna. He's in every canto. He has a guru too. Who's his guru? Brahma, the firstborn, the first of the demigods. So in a conversation that Narada has with Brahma, the same topics that Parikshit is asking about were actually answered. So Shukadeva is showing, like, we're not here to make anything new up. We're not here to make a name for ourselves. It's not about ego. It's like, because I understand what my predecessors have shared, I'll just share it with you. So we're going to get to that. And that's the qualification. A real teacher is a real student. Which means you're all teachers too. All right, more questions or reflections, comments? Things that came up in the third chapter. Anything that stood? It could be something small. Looks like Samantha wants to say something.
I have something.
Oh, great.
The modes of worship, the different demigods have different areas of expertise of protection, while Krishna kind of covers it all.
Could you repeat that?
So the demigods,
yeah.
have protection of the different, more like materialistic is what I think.
Yeah.
Whereas Krishna, that's where you want to go.
Yeah, the demigods are empowered to oversee certain aspects of the creation. This sense organ, this as part of the universe, this aspect of the relationship of the, they're basically, in many ways, they're just empowered servants of Krishna's creation, but Krishna's the boss of all the little bosses. Yeah. We're not going to flatter any of the middle managers for as if they're the supreme. It's actually kind of like, somebody who's cultured and has like a good heart, they don't like being told that there's something they're not. And you can imagine, like, if someone came to you and said, "Oh wow, you actually are God. You're actually the supreme person yourself." You're like, "No, I'm not. I'm a servant of the servant." So the demigods also, they know who they are, and they're grateful for that. They don't want to try to be the supreme, and they're also like very advanced devotees in their own right, but they're middle managers in the universe, and Krishna's the in charge. So you got it.
And then even sometimes they forget.
Sometimes they can't forget.
Indra, who gets his ego.
Sometimes
checked.
I can forget. When I'm puffed up by my own sense of self-importance, I can forget. So Indra's just showing, like,
it's comforting
through his own little pastime with Krishna, like, for the sake of all of us egotistical living entities, what it's like to get carried away with your own temporary and materially confined sense of importance when it kind of gets blown out of proportion. Yeah, that's just what that's all. That happens sometimes. Brahma had it happen to him one time. Yeah, that's their mercy on us to show us what it's like to be a little bit spaced out. Did anyone have anything else to share that they wanted to?
Something?
Yeah, did you have some to share, Samantha? Or were you just kind of no? She was just moving towards her laptop, and I got optimistic. That's okay. You're here. That's what matters. All right, let's jump into chapter 4. Hare Krishna. So this chapter, it's called the process of creation. Text 1. Suta Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, the son of Uttara, after hearing the speeches of Shukadeva Goswami, which were all about the truth of the self, applied his concentration faithfully upon Lord Krishna. Remember the previous chapter ended with Shukadeva Goswami really pointing out that Krishna really is the supreme destination, and isn't it a shame when people forget that and focus on inferior things? And so his student is reminded from the purport. The word satim is very significant. This means existing and chaste, and both imports are perfectly applicable in the case of Maharaj Parikshit. The whole Vedic adventure is to draw one's attention entirely onto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna without any diversion. Fortunately, Maharaj Parikshit had already been attracted to the Lord from the very beginning of his body, in the womb of his mother. In the womb of his mother, he was struck by the Brahmastra atomic bomb released by Ashwatthama. But by the grace of the Lord, he was saved from being burnt by the fiery weapon. And since then, the king continuously concentrated his mind upon Lord Krishna, which made him perfectly chaste in devotional service. So by natural sequence, he was a chaste devotee of the Lord. And when he further heard from Srila Shukadeva Goswami that one should worship the Lord only and no one else, even though full of all desires or desireless, his natural affection for Krishna was strengthened. We have already discussed these topics, right? Because the previous chapter gave an elaborate description of, if you have this material desire, you can worship this way. This material desire, you can worship that way. Different demigods. But you should really, if you want to get free and you want the highest benediction, you should just worship the Supreme. And there was that famous verse that we really focused on, akama sarva kamova. If you have all kinds of material desires, if you just want to be liberated, or if you're completely indifferent and you're already situated in devotion, no matter what your situation is, just worship the Supreme. So that's what Prabhupada's referring to. Verse 2. Maharaj Parikshit, as a result of his wholehearted attraction for Lord Krishna, was able to give up all deep-rooted affection for his personal body, his wife, his children, his palace, his animals like horses and elephants, his treasury house, his friends and relatives, and his undisputed kingdom. Purport. To become liberated means to become free from dehatma buddhi, the illusory attachment for personal bodily coverings and everything connected with the body, namely wife, children, and all other entanglements. So in this context, of course, wife just means partner. Parikshit was married, and he was a king. He had so much opulence. So you can imagine he's married to beautiful, and there's so many children, and so there's all of these accoutrements to material life. From the purport a little bit later, it says, in modern civilization, the horses and elephants have been replaced by cars and conveyances with considerable horsepower. To maintain all the household affairs, one has to increase the bank balance and be careful about the treasury house. And in order to display the opulence of material assets, one has to keep good relations with friends and relatives, as well as become very careful about maintaining the status quo. Interesting. Prabhupada, he says, to display the opulence of material assets, you got to have neighbors to show off to. If you don't have friends, then how can you know you're doing well? This is kind of like, in the material context, there's this part of the game. This is what the game is. Has all these different little pieces of currency, and Prabhupada calls it. He says this is called material civilization of material attachment. Devotion for Lord Krishna means negation of all material attachments, as detailed above. By the grace of Lord Krishna, Maharaj Parikshit was awarded all material amenities and an undisputed kingdom in which to enjoy the undisturbed position of king. But by the grace of the Lord, he was able to give up all connections with material attachment. That is the position of a pure devotee. Maharaj Parikshit, due to his natural affection for Lord Krishna, as a devotee of the Lord, was always executing his royal duties on behalf of the Lord. And as a responsible king of the world, he was always careful to see that the influence of Kali would not enter his kingdom. Remember that came up in the last canto. A devotee of the Lord never thinks of their household paraphernalia as their own, but surrenders everything for the service of the Lord. Thereby living entities under a devotee's care get the opportunity for God realization by the management of a devotee master. So Prabhupada's pointing out here that it's not that because he was a devotee, he didn't have any connection with the material world. He had so many connections, but they were all in terms of his relationship with Krishna. That's how he viewed them. He didn't view them as, I'm a king, He had that position everyone's hankering for. In fact, this is one of the interesting hallmarks of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We have the pastimes of a lot of kings. And one may ask why. Well, the answer is that the king or someone like that is really emblematic of the person who is absolutely on top of the material game. They have all the money, they have all the power, prestige, importance, sense gratification, everything, all of it. And we're interacting here. We're hearing about devotee kings, persons like Parikshit who are at the top materially, and so have their hands in so many pies, so to speak. But nothing is for themselves. They're viewing all their material relationships as just another function of their relationship with Krishna. It's like, this is my wife, this is my children. Okay, that means this is Krishna's, wife. These are Krishna's children. This is Krishna's kingdom. These are Krishna's citizens. So that's what Prabhupada's talking about here. Very important for us because we may not be kings or queens, but we all have so many aspects of our existence. And when we're hearing about these devotees, we're hearing about how they spiritualized all these aspects. Continuing the purport, attachment for household paraphernalia and for Lord Krishna go poorly together. One attachment is the path of darkness, and the other attachment is the path of light. Where there is light, there is no darkness, and where there is darkness, there is no light. But an expert devotee can turn everything to the path of light by an attitude of service to the Lord. And the best example here is the Pandavas. Maharaj Yudhishthira and householders like him can turn everything to light by dovetailing so-called material assets in the service of the Lord. But one who is not trained or is unable to turn everything to the service of the Lord must give up all material connections before they can be fit to hear and chant the glories of the Lord. Or in other words, one who has seriously heard Srimad Bhagavatam for even one day, like Maharaj Parikshit, from a fit personality like Shukadeva Goswami, may be able to lose all affinity for material things. There is no utility simply in imitating Maharaj Parikshit and hearing Bhagavatam from professional persons, even for 700 years. To take Srimad Bhagavatam as a means of maintaining family expenditure is the grossest type of namaparad offense. Prabhupada is criticizing the tendency you find in India to, like, maybe you'll have somebody recite the Srimad Bhagavatam as a pious activity, but they're not doing it because they have any devotion for Krishna. They're doing it because they know they got a crowd and they can charge for people to come in the door, and they're going to go home and just eat, sleep, and just like live like anybody else. So it's just a job for them. It's a 9 to 5. And so the quality of Parikshit's hearing was he was hearing from a pure devotee. With himself, he had pure intention, and therefore his consciousness is completely purified. Yeah. Verses 3 and 4. O great sages, the great soul Maharaj Parikshit, constantly wrapped in thought of Lord Krishna, knowing well of his imminent death, renounced all sorts of fruitive activities, namely acts of religion, economic development, and sense gratification, and thus fixed himself firmly in his natural love for Krishna, and asked all these questions exactly as you are asking me. Purport. The 3 activities of religion, economic development, and sense gratification are generally attractive for conditioned souls struggling for existence in the material world. Right? So here the word dharma, translated as religion, refers to like the rituals, including attachment to just morality for morality's sake. You follow morality, you follow like scriptural injunctions, and you create a life that's suitable for getting some economic development, material economic development that allows you to gratify your senses. Those are the 3 aspects of material life. And so we're hearing about how Parikshit he had let that go because he was always thinking about Krishna, and his thought of Krishna was really intensified at this time because he knew this is it. We're about to cross the finish line. Like let's focus in right here. From the purport, Prabhupada talks about this this phenomenon of letting go of inferior religious principles towards the end of the purport, letting go of that in favor of just worshiping Krishna, just worshiping the Supreme Person with love. Srila Madhavendra Puri, the grand spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya, took leave of all karma khandiya obligations in the following words. Sandhya vandana bhadramastu bhavato bhosnana tubhyang namo po devah pitarashcha tarpana vitao nahang kshamaksham yatam yatra kvapi nishardya yadava kulottamasya kangsadrusha smarang smaramakang harame taralam manye kimanyena me. O my evening prayer, all good unto you. O my morning bath, I bid you goodbye. O demigods and forefathers, please excuse me, I am unable to perform any more offerings for your pleasure. Now I have decided to free myself from all reactions to sins simply by remembering anywhere and everywhere the great descendant of Yadu and the great enemy of Kamsa, Lord Krishna. I think that this is sufficient for me. So what is the use of further endeavors? He continues, let the sharp moralist accuse me of being illusioned. I do not mind. Experts in Vedic activities may slander me as being misled. Friends and relatives may call me frustrated. My brothers may call me a fool. The wealthy Mammonites, refers to the biblical idea of mammon, right? Like worship of material advancement for its own sake. The wealthy Mammonites may point me out as mad, and the learned philosophers may assert that I am much too proud. Still my mind does not budge an inch from the determination to serve the lotus feet of Govinda, though I be unable to do it. So Maharaj Parikshit was perfectly right when he firmly accepted the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, renouncing all karma khandiya conceptions of life. Verse 5. Maharaj Parikshit said, O learned Brahmana, you know everything because you are without material contamination. Therefore, whatever you have spoken to me appears perfectly right. Your speeches are gradually destroying the darkness of my ignorance, for you are narrating the topics of the Lord. Purport: the practical experience of Maharaj Parikshit is disclosed herein, revealing that transcendental topics of the Lord act like injections when received by the sincere devotee from a person who is perfectly uncontaminated by material tinges. When a hungry person is given food to eat, they feel satiation of hunger and the pleasure of dining simultaneously. Thus, they do not have to ask whether they have actually been fed or not. The crucial test of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is that one should get positive enlightenment by such an act. That's actually Prabhupada paraphrasing a verse from the 11th canto, where it says that just like when a hungry person eats, they have the eradication of hunger, satisfaction, and fullness, like the eradication of the pangs of hunger, fullness, and satisfaction. All three happen. And similarly, by practicing bhakti, one loses their material suffering, they realize Krishna, and they feel love for him grow simultaneously. And so it's very much pointing to like the directly experienced aspects of bhakti. That's the nature of bhakti. This is why we keep coming to Tuesday Bhagavatam class. It's like it's doing something, right? And Parikshit's saying that I feel nourished by this. I beg to know from you how the personality of Godhead, by his personal energies, creates these phenomenal universes as they are, which are inconceivable even to the great demigods. That's his fundamental question in this chapter, right? He wants to know what the relationship is between the Lord and the material world. Right? How does he create? Purport: in every inquisitive mind, the important question of the creation of the phenomenal world arises. And therefore, for a personality like Maharaj Parikshit, who was to know all the activities of the Lord from the spiritual master, such an inquiry is not uncommon. For every unknown thing, we have to learn and inquire from a learned personality. The question of creation is also one of such inquiries to be made to the right person. The spiritual master, therefore, must be one who is sarvagya, as stated herein before, in connection with Shukadev Goswami. Thus, all inquiries on God, which are unknown to the disciple, may be made from the qualified spiritual master. And here the practical example is set by Maharaj Parikshit. So Bhagavatam is going to point out in a pretty significant chunk of this canto, what's the deal with the material world? Where did it come from? And how is it connected to source? Right? Prabhupada continues, he says, the common man also knows that the creation is made by some creator and is not created automatically. We have no experience in the practical world that a thing is created automatically. Foolish people say that the creative energy is independent and acts automatically, as electrical energy works. But the intelligent person knows that even the electrical energy is generated by an expert engineer in the localized powerhouse, and thus the energy is distributed everywhere under the resident engineer's supervision. This is a logical presentation pointing out the absurdity of the idea that things can happen randomly, that order can come from chaos randomly. It's like, imagine, I go in the kitchen and I get a bunch of ingredients and I throw them up in the air. They're going to fall down and make a cake, right? I mean, it's not impossible, right? They could. Right. They could combine properly, and it's like a bolt of lightning could come in and flash cook the cake before it hits the ground. And there it is. It's a cake. How did it happen? Oh, it's just random. It doesn't. Nothing happens like that. Nothing ever happens like that. Order doesn't come from chaos spontaneously. There has to be some purposeful choice, some exercise of energy. So, Prabhupada's use of logic here. An inexperienced person, boy or girl, may be struck with wonder by seeing the impersonal actions of electronics or many other wonderful things conducted by electrical energy. But an experienced person knows that behind the action is a living person who creates such energy. Similarly, the so-called scholars and philosophers of the world may, by mental speculation, present so many utopian theories about the impersonal creation of the universe, but an intelligent devotee of the Lord, by studying the Bhagavad Gita, can know that behind the creation is the hand of the Supreme Lord, just as in the generating electrical powerhouse there is the resident engineer. The research scholar finds out the cause and the effect of everything, but research scholars as great as Brahma, Shiva, Indra, and many other demigods are sometimes bewildered by seeing the wonderful creative energy of the Lord. So what to speak of the tiny, mundane scholars dealing in petty things? As there are differences in the living conditions of different planets of the universe, and as one planet is superior to others, The brains of the living entities in those respective planets are also of different categorical values. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, one can compare the long duration of life of the inhabitants of Brahma's planet, which is inconceivable to the inhabitants of this planet Earth, to the categorical value of the brain of Brahmaji, also inconceivable to any great scientist of this planet. Brahmaji admits Lord Krishna to be the supreme cause of all causes, but persons with tiny brains within this petty planet Earth think of the Lord as one of them. Thus, when the Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita that he, Lord Krishna, is all in all, the speculative philosophers and the mundane wranglers deride him, and the Lord regretfully says, from 9:11 Bhagavad Gita, fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be. Brahma and Shiva, and what to speak of other demigods, are bhutas, or powerful created demigods, who manage universal affairs, much like ministers appointed by king. The ministers may be Ishvaras, or controllers, but the Supreme Lord is Maheshvara, or the creator of the controllers. Persons with a poor fund of knowledge do not know this, and therefore they have the audacity to deride him because he comes before us by his causeless mercy, occasionally, as a human being. The Lord is not like a human being. He is Satchit Ananda Vigraha, or the absolute personality of Godhead. And there is no difference between his body and his soul. He is both the power and the powerful. Maharaj Parikshit did not ask his spiritual master, Shukadeva Goswami, to narrate Lord Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. He wanted to hear first about the creation of the Lord. Shukadeva Goswami did not say that the king should hear about the direct transcendental pastimes of the Lord. The time was very short, and naturally Shukadeva Goswami could have gone directly to the 10th canto to make a shortcut of the whole thing, as generally done by the professional reciters. But neither the king nor the great speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam jumped up like the organizers of Bhagavatam. Both of them proceeded systematically, so that both future readers and hearers might take lessons from the example of the procedure of reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. Those who are under the control of the material energy, or in other words, those who are in the material world, must first of all know how the external energy of the Lord is working under the direction of the Supreme Personality, and afterwards one may try to enter into the activities of his internal energy. Therefore, the neophyte devotee, instead of jumping at once to the platform of transcendental pastimes presented by the internal energy of the Lord, may know how great the Supreme Lord is by inquiring about the process of his creative energy. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita also, descriptions of the creative energy and the Lord's hand in it are explained, and the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita has warned the neophyte devotees to be seriously on guard against the pitfall of neglecting knowledge about Krishna in regard to how great he is. Only when one knows Lord Krishna's greatness can one firmly put one's unflinching faith in him. Otherwise, like the common person, even the great leaders of men will mistake Lord Krishna for one of the demigods, or a historical personality, or a myth only. The transcendental pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan, or even at Dvarka, are relishable for persons who have already qualified themselves in advanced spiritual techniques, and the common man may be able to attain to such a plane by the gradual process of service and inquiries, as we shall see in the behavior of Maharaj Parikshit. Very important principle here, because what happens when somebody has failed to internalize that there is a supreme source and everything in the material world is connected to that source and is under the ownership, control of that source, is that they leave a gap in their understanding that they fill with their own ego. Because they're continuing to see the world and everything in it in terms of what it can mean for them and how they can be the owner and controller of it. So hearing about how Krishna manifests the cosmos, hearing about the massive time scale, hearing about the evolution of different places of, like different planes of existence, lower, middle, upper planetary systems, the different elements, those kinds of things, it's very humbling because we're really, really small. Even materially, we're just very, very, very small. And the sweetness of Krishna's pastimes, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says, it's like a beautiful gem. If you want a diamond to look its most beautiful, you have to put it against black velvet, because then you can see it. So Krishna is amazing, not just because of what he's doing, but because he's actually in charge of everything materially that we have any experience of. And here he is having fun. Here's his private life. That's somebody who is so in control that an expansion of an expansion of an expansion of himself controls all of the material world. So what is it that he's doing for fun? that makes his pastime so beautiful, that the complete controller is subordinating himself to his lovers in Vrindavan. He's making himself the pet child of Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. That's incredibly touching. But if it's just like, oh, this is some guy, right? There's no context. If one cannot appreciate his greatness, then one will overlook, one will take very cheaply Krishna's pastime. So that's what these early cantos in many ways do, is really contextualize everything Krishna is doing and his pastimes and his personhood into the context of, yeah, but he's actually the supreme. He's the source of time and all energies. So that's what these next couple of chapters are about. Verse 7. Kindly describe how the Supreme Lord, who is all-powerful, engages his different energies and different expansions in maintaining and again winding up the phenomenal world in the sporting spirit of a player. Right? So you asked, how does the Lord create? Now he's asking, how does he engage his energies? Purport. In the Canto Upanishad, the Supreme Lord is described as the chief eternal being amongst all other eternal individual beings, and the one Supreme Lord who maintains innumerable other individual living beings. So all living entities, both in the conditioned state and in the liberated state, are maintained by the Almighty Supreme Lord. Such maintenance is effected by the Lord through his different expansions of self and three principal energies, namely the internal, external, and marginal energies. The living entities are his marginal energies, and some of them, in the confidence of the Lord, are entrusted with the work of creation also, as are Brahma, Marichi, etc. Those are demigods. And the acts of creation are inspired by the Lord unto them. Tene Brahma Hrida. The external energy, Maya, is also impregnated with the jivas, or conditioned souls. The unconditioned marginal potency acts in the spiritual kingdom, and the Lord, by his different plenary expansions, maintains them in different transcendental relations displayed in the spiritual sky. So the one Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests himself in many, and thus all diversities are in him, and he is in all diversities, although he is nevertheless different from all of them. That is the inconceivable mystic power of the Lord, and as such everything is simultaneously one with and different from him by his inconceivable potencies. I thought it was very interesting how Parikshit says he maintains and withdraws the material world in the sporting mood of a player. O learned Brahmana, verse 8, the transcendental activities of the Lord are all wonderful, and they appear inconceivable because even great endeavors by many learned scholars have still proved insufficient for understanding them. From the purport, the Lord is called Anadi, or having no creator, and Adi, or the origin of all. We think in our own imperfect way that the Lord is also created, but the Vedanta informs us that he is not created. Rather, everything else is created by him. Therefore, for the common person, these are all very wonderful matters for consideration. Even for great scholars, they are inconceivable. And thus, such scholars present theories contradictory to one another. Even for the insignificant part of his creation, this particular universe, they have no complete information as to how far this limited space extends, or how many stars and planets are there, or the different conditions of those innumerable planets. Modern scientists have insufficient knowledge of all this. Some of them assert that there are 100 million planets scattered all over space. In a news release from Moscow dated 2/21/1960, the following piece of knowledge was relayed. Quote, Russia's well-known professor of astronomy Boris Vorontsev-Vilyaminov said that there must be an infinite number of planets in the universe inhabited by beings endowed with reason. There are a variety, so Prabhupada's giving a variety of theories and ideas that people have. We can use this logic that Prabhupada is demonstrating for us to good effect. We can see, like, if you want to know about your great-great-grandmother, great-great-grandfather, chances are you can't have direct experience. Chances are you never met them, right? But they existed, and they existed before you. And so you have to take it from some authority. Who they were, what they did, who they looked like, where they were born, what was their name, what were their activities, qualities. And you can't know that on your own. It's not possible to learn that on your own. Nobody's ever determined that, even about their own great-great-grandparents, right? So what are we trying to do? Like, trying to figure out the great-great-great-grandmother, grandfather of all living entities. the Supreme Person, if they're the Anadi, the one with no beginning, with no origin, then how can we kind of jump over them and figure them out from above? Like, it doesn't work, right? Verse 9. Another question. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is one, whether he alone acts with the modes of material nature or simultaneously expands in many forms, or expands consecutively to direct the modes of nature.
Is that a question?
Yeah, he's basically asking, how does he expand himself?
Okay. And Parikshit's asking this.
Yes, he's asked, how does the Lord create? How does he engage his energies? And how does he expand himself? Verse 10. Kindly clear up all these doubtful inquiries, because you are not only vastly learned in the Vedic literatures and self-realized in transcendence, but are also a great devotee of the Lord, and are therefore as good as the personality of Godhead. Maharaj Parikshit admitted in the previous verse that the Lord is inconceivable even for the greatest learned scholars. Why then should he again request Shukadeva Goswami to clarify his insufficient knowledge about the Lord? The reason is clear. Not only was Shukadeva Goswami vastly learned in the Vedic literatures, but he was also a great self-realized soul and a powerful devotee of the Lord. A powerful devotee of the Lord is, by the grace of the Lord, more than the Lord himself. The personality of Godhead Sri Ramachandra attempted to bridge the Indian Ocean to reach the island of Lanka, but Sri Hanumanji, the unalloyed devotee of the personality of Godhead, could cross the ocean simply by jumping over it. The Lord is so merciful upon his pure devotee that he presents his beloved devotee as more powerful than himself. The conclusion is therefore that a serious devotee must first approach a spiritual master who not only is well versed in the Vedic literatures but is also a great devotee, with factual realization of the Lord and his different energies. Without the help of such a devotee, spiritual master, one cannot make progress in the transcendental science of the Lord. And a bona fide spiritual master like Shukadeva Goswami does not speak about the Lord only in the matter of his internal potencies, but also explains how he associates with his external potencies, right? Including matter and all aspects of it. Verse 11. Sutta Goswami said, when Shukadeva Goswami was thus requested by the king to describe the creative energy of the personality of Godhead, he then systematically remembered the master of the senses, Sri Krishna. Hrishikesha, that's what the word Hrishikesha means. Hrishika Isha, master of the senses. He remembered the master of the senses, Sri Krishna, and to reply properly, he spoke thus. From the purport, the devotees of the Lord, while delivering speeches and describing the transcendental attributes of the Lord, do not think that they can do anything independently. They think that they can speak only what they are induced to speak about the Supreme Lord, the master of the senses. The senses of the individual being are not their own. The devotee knows that such senses belong to the Supreme Lord and that they can be properly used when they are employed for the service of the Lord. The senses are instruments, and elements are ingredients, all endowed by the Lord. Therefore, whatever an individual can do, speak, see, etc., is under the direction of the Lord only. No one is free to act freely and independently, and as such, one should always seek the permission of the Lord to act or eat or speak. And by the blessing of the Lord, everything done by a devotee is beyond the principles of the four defects, typical of the conditioned soul. Verse 12. So in these next few verses, Shukadeva is speaking, and before he even answers the question, his conduct is very telling. What does he do? Verse 12, Shukadeva Goswami said, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who, for the creation of the material world, accepts the three modes of nature. He is the complete whole residing within the body of everyone, and his ways are inconceivable. Verse 13. I again offer my respectful obeisances unto the form of complete existence and transcendence, who is the liberator of the pious devotees from all distresses, and the destroyer of the further advances in atheistic temperament of the non-devotee demons. For the transcendentalists who are situated in the topmost spiritual perfection, he grants their specific destinations. From the purport, since the Lord is very kind to everyone, the impersonalists who accept bhakti as the means of merging in the existence of the Lord in his impersonal Brahma Jyoti are also awarded their desired destination. In the Bhagavad Gita 4.11, he has assured everyone, Yegata mam prapadyante. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, that verse means, as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone is following my path in all respects. According to Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti, there are two classes of Paramahamsas, namely Brahmanandis, impersonalists, and Premanandis, devotees. And both are awarded their desired destinations, although the Premanandis are more fortunate than the Brahmanandis. But both the Brahmanandis and the Premanandis are transcendentalists, and they have nothing to do with the inferior, material nature, full of the existential miseries of life. So even for those who are seeking impersonal merging, Krishna is facilitating and allowing such an end, such a purpose. 14. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him who is the associate of the members of the Yadu dynasty and who is always a problem for the non-devotees. He is the supreme enjoyer of both the material and spiritual worlds. Yet he enjoys his own abode in the spiritual sky. There is no one equal to him because his transcendental opulence is immeasurable. Verse 15. So he's offering prayers. Before I even start, he said, before I even start, let me offer my prayers. 15. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the all-auspicious Lord Sri Krishna, about whom glorification, remembrances, audience, prayers, hearing, and worship can at once cleanse the effects of all sins of the performer. Purport. The sublime form of religious performances, to free oneself from all reactions of sins, is suggested herein by the greatest authority, Sri Shukadeva Goswami. Kirtanam, or glorifying the Lord, can be performed in very many ways, such as remembering, visiting temples to see the deity, offering prayers in front of the Lord, and hearing recitations of glorification of the Lord mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. Kirtanam can be performed both by singing the glories of the Lord in accompaniment with melodious music, and by recitation of scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. So this is also kirtan. This is kirtan we're doing right now. It's not just the Nam kirtan at the beginning, kirtan of the holy name. This is also kirtan. The devotees need not be disappointed in the physical absence of the Lord, though they may think of not being associated with him. The devotional process of chanting, hearing, remembering, etc., either all or some of them, or even one of them, can give us the desired result of associating with the Lord by discharging the transcendental loving service of the Lord in the above manner. Even the very sound of the holy name of Lord Krishna or Rama can at once surcharge the atmosphere spiritually. We must know definitely that the Lord is present wherever such pure transcendental service is performed, and thus the performer of offenseless kirtanam has positive association with the Lord. Similarly, remembrance and prayers also can give us the desired result if they are properly done under expert guidance. One should not concoct forms of devotional service. One may worship the form of the Lord in a temple, or one may impersonally offer the Lord devotional prayers in a mosque or a church. One is sure to get free from the reactions of sins, provided one is very careful about not committing sins willingly in expectation of getting free from the reactions by worshiping in the temple or by offering prayers in the church. Right? It's an offense against bhakti to willingly engage in what you know is displeasing to the Supreme and which damages our relationship and separates us. And thinking, well, because I'm performing devotional activities, it's okay because that'll just purify any effect of my, one may have, in other words, material desires, but that's not exactly an offense. What is an offense is to try to use leverage bhakti to justify maintaining your material desires. That's what Prabhupada's talking about here. Hearing, therefore, is essential in order to keep oneself strictly on guard against such pitfalls. And in order to give special stress to the hearing process, the Goswami, Shukadeva Goswami, invokes all auspicious fortune in this matter. Let me offer my respectful obeisances again and again unto the all-auspicious Lord Sri Krishna. Verse 16. The highly intellectual, simply by surrendering unto his lotus feet, are relieved of all attachments to present and future existences, and without difficulty progress towards spiritual existence. Verse 17. Let Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the all-auspicious Lord Sri Krishna again and again, because the great learned sages, the great performers of charity, the great workers of distinction, the great philosophers and mystics, the great chanters of the Vedic hymns, and the great followers of Vedic principles cannot achieve any fruitful result without dedication of such great qualities to the service of the Lord. Purport: advancement of learning, a charitable disposition, political, social, or religious leadership of human society, philosophical speculations, the practice of the yoga system, expertise in the Vedic rituals, and all similar high qualities in man serve one in the attainment to perfection only when they are employed in the service of the Lord. Without such dovetailing, all such qualities become sources of trouble for people in general. Everything can be utilized either for one's own sense gratification or in the service of one other than oneself. There are two kinds of self-interest also, namely personal selfishness and extended selfishness. But there is no qualitative difference between personal and extended selfishness. Theft for personal interest or for the family interest is of the same quality, namely criminal. A thief pleading not guilty because of committing theft not for personal interest but for the interest of society or country has never been excused by the established law of any country. People in general have no knowledge that the self-interest of a living being attains perfection only when such an interest coincides with the interest of the Lord. For example, what is the interest of maintaining body and soul together? One earns money for maintenance of the body, personal or social, but unless there is God consciousness, unless the body is being properly maintained to realize one's relation with God, all good efforts to maintain body and soul together are similar to the attempts of the animals to maintain body and soul together. The purpose of maintaining the human body is different from that of the animals. Similarly, advancement of learning, economic development, philosophical research, study in the Vedic literature, or even the execution of pious activities like charity, opening of hospitals, and the distribution of food grains should be done in relation with the Lord. The aim of all such acts and endeavors must be the pleasure of the Lord and not the satisfaction of any other identity, individual or collective. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:27, the same principle is confirmed where it is said that whatever we may give in charity, whatever we may observe in austerity must be given over to the Lord or done on His account only. The expert leaders of a godless human civilization cannot bring about a fruitful result in all their different attempts at educational advancement or economic development unless they are God-conscious. And to become God-conscious, one has to hear about the all-auspicious Lord as He's described in literature like the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Verse 18. Famous verse. Kirata hunandra pulenda pulkasha pira shumpaya vanakasarya yenyecha papa yarapashraya shraya shuddhyanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha. So, Shukadeva Goswami has been glorifying the Lord, and in this verse, he says something about the Lord's devotee. He says, Kirata, Huna, Andhra, Pulinda, Pulkasha, Abhira, Shumba, Yavana, members of the Kasa races and even others addicted to sinful acts, can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord, due to His being the supreme power. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto Him. He's pointing out that anyone, anywhere, from any background, can become purified. And these are all Sanskrit names for parts of the world. This was spoken 5,000 years ago, but just a partial list of these names. So Kirata is a section of India. Huna is an area of East Germany, part of Russia. Andhra is southern India. Pulinda looks like Greece. Abhira is Arabia. Yeah, Old India. These are all like Turkey, Mongolia, China. Yeah, these are all sections of the world in Sanskrit. And Prabhupada is saying here, it's something very beautiful in the purport. The above mentioned historical names are different nations of the world. Even those who are constantly engaged in sinful acts are all corrigible to the standard of perfect human beings if they take shelter of the devotees of the Lord. Jesus Christ and Muhammad, two powerful devotees of the Lord, have done tremendous service on behalf of the Lord on the surface of the globe. And from the version of Srila Shukadeva Goswami, it appears that instead of running a godless civilization in the present context of the world's situation, if the leadership of world affairs is entrusted to the devotees of the Lord, for which a worldwide organization under the name and style of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has already been started, Then by the grace of the Almighty Lord there can be a thorough change of heart in human beings all over the world, because the devotees of the Lord are able authorities to effect such a change by purifying the dust-worn minds of the people in general. The politicians of the world may remain in their respective positions because the pure devotees of the Lord are not interested in political leadership or diplomatic implications. The devotees are interested only in seeing that the people in general are not misguided by political propaganda, and that the valuable life of a human being is not spoiled in following a type of civilization which is ultimately doomed. If the politicians therefore would be guided by the good counsel of the devotees, then certainly there would be a great change in the world situation by the purifying propaganda of the devotees, as shown by Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya recommended that simply by glorifying the Lord's holy name, a tremendous change of heart can take place, by which the complete misunderstanding between the human nations created by politicians can at once be extinguished. And after the extinction of the fire of misunderstanding, other profits will follow. The destination is to go back home, back to Godhead, as we have several times discussed in these pages. According to the cult of devotion, cult of course means culture, generally known as the Vaishnava cult, there is no bar against anyone's advancing in the matter of God realization. A Vaishnava is powerful enough to turn into a Vaishnava even the Kirata, etc., as above mentioned. It is said by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita 9.32 that there is no bar to becoming a devotee of the Lord, even for those who are low-born, or women, Shudras, or Vaishyas. And becoming a devotee, everyone is eligible to return home back to Godhead. The only qualification is that one takes shelter of a pure devotee of the Lord who has thorough knowledge in the transcendental science of Krishna. Anyone from any part of the world who becomes well conversant in the science of Krishna becomes a pure devotee and a spiritual master for the general mass of people, and may reclaim them by purification of heart. Though a person may be even the most sinful man or woman, he can at once be purified by systematic contact with a pure Vaishnava. A Vaishnava therefore can accept a bona fide disciple from any part of the world without any consideration of caste and creed, and promote them by regulative principles to the status of a pure Vaishnava who is transcendental to Brahminical culture. The system of caste or varnashrama dharma is no longer regular, even amongst the so-called followers of the system, nor is it now possible to re-establish the institutional function in the present context of social, political, and economic revolution. Without any reference to the particular custom of a country, one can be accepted to the Vaishnava cult spiritually, and there is no hindrance in the transcendental process. So, by the order of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the cult of Srimad Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita can be preached all over the world, reclaiming all persons willing to accept the transcendental cult. Such cultural propaganda by the devotees will certainly be accepted by all persons who are reasonable and inquisitive without any particular bias for the custom of the country. The Vaishnava never accepts another Vaishnava on the basis of birthright, just as they never think of the deity of the Lord in a temple as an idol. And to remove all doubts in this connection, Sri Shukadeva Goswami has invoked the blessings of the Lord, who is all-powerful. Prabhavishnave Namaha.
Non-sectarian right there.
What's that?
Non-sectarian.
Very
right
non-sectarian.
there.
Very non-sectarian. When they give themselves up to the service of the Lord, they are trained by a qualified Vaishnava. The injunction of Vaishnava regulations in this connection runs as follows, quote, one should not consider the deity of the Lord as worshipped in the temple to be an idol, nor should one consider the authorized spiritual master an ordinary person, an ordinary man. Nor should one consider a pure Vaishnava to belong to a particular caste, etc. That's a quote from the Padma Purana. The conclusion is that the Lord, being all-powerful, can under any and every circumstance accept anyone from any part of the world, either personally or through his bona fide manifestation as the spiritual master. Lord Chaitanya accepted many devotees from communities other than the Varnashramites. The Varnashramites, those who follow the strict system. And he himself declared to teach us that he does not belong to any caste or social order of life, but that he is the eternal servant of the Lord, who maintains the damsels of Vrindavan, Lord Krishna. That is the way of self-realization. Famous verse, famous purport. 2:418. Okay, almost there. 19. He is the super soul and the supreme Lord of all self-realized souls. He is the personification of the Vedas, religious scriptures, and austerities. He is worshipped by Lord Brahma and Shiva and all those who are transcendental to all pretensions. Being so revered with awe and veneration, may that supreme absolute be pleased with me. Verse 20. May Lord Sri Krishna, who is the worshipable Lord of all devotees, the protector and glory of all the kings like Antaka and Vrishni of the Yadu dynasty, the husband of all goddesses of fortune, the director of all sacrifices and therefore the leader of all living entities, the controller of all intelligence, the proprietor of all planets, spiritual and material, and the supreme incarnation on the earth, the supreme all in all, be merciful upon me. Verse 21. It is the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna who gives liberation by thinking of his lotus feet at every second. Following in the footsteps of authorities, the devotee in trance can see the absolute truth. The learned mental speculators, however, think of him according to their whims. May the Lord be pleased with me. 22. May the Lord, who in the beginning of the creation amplified the potent knowledge of Brahma from within his heart, and inspired him with full knowledge of creation and of his own self, and who appeared to be generated from the mouth of Brahma, be pleased with me. From the purport. In the beginning of the creation, Brahma is born first without any father and mother, because before Brahma there were no other living beings. Brahma is born from the lotus which grows from the abdomen of the Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, and therefore he is known as Aja, which means unborn. This Brahma, or Aja, is also a living being, part and parcel of the Lord, but being the most pious devotee of the Lord, Brahma is inspired by the Lord to create, subsequent to the main creation by the Lord, through the agency of material nature. Therefore, neither the material nature nor Brahma is independent of the Lord. The material scientist can merely observe the reactions of the material nature without understanding the direction behind such activities, as a child can see the action of electricity without any knowledge of the powerhouse engineer. This imperfect knowledge of the material scientist is due to a poor fund of knowledge. Verse 23. May the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who enlivens the materially created bodies of the elements by lying down within the universe, and who in his Purusha incarnation causes the living being to be subjected to the 16 divisions of material modes, which are his generator, be pleased to decorate my statements. Verse 24.
What does that mean, the 16 divisions of material modes?
That's going to be elaborated later on with that. Let's probably talk about it here. No?
Not yet.
Yeah. That's what's called Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya means to count, to enumerate. Sankhya is a way of understanding the Supreme by defining categories. In this case, this is a reference to 16 categories of material existence, which will be described later. Because the living entity is not in any of those categories, and neither is Krishna. But they include like earth, fire, water, air, like that. Verse 24.
It's right in the purport at the bottom of the next page. He kind of just says the 16 principal creative elements, namely earth, air, fire,
Yeah.
air,
The
sky,
16
and 11 sense organs, first of all, from Lord himself. Yeah.
Yeah. The 16 principal creative elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, sky, that means space. And the 11 sense organs first developed from the Lord himself and were thereby shared by the living entities. Thus, the material elements were created for the enjoyment of living entities. The beautiful arrangement behind all material manifestations is therefore made possible by the energy of the Lord, and the individual living entity can only pray to the Lord to understand it properly. Yeah, that's going to be described more elaborately later, but there it is in summary. Thank you, Eileen.
When you said material modes, I was thinking the gunas.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Not exactly.
Yeah.
24. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of Vasudeva, who compiled the Vedic scriptures. The pure devotees drink up the nectarian transcendental knowledge dropping from the lotus-like mouth of the Lord. 25. My dear king, Brahma, the firstborn, on being questioned by Narada, exactly apprised him on this subject, as it had been directly spoken by the Lord to his own son, who was impregnated with Vedic knowledge from his very birth. From the purport, Brahma, on being questioned by Narada, told Narada exactly what he had heard directly from the Lord. Narada again told exactly the same thing to Vyasa, and Vyasa also told Shukadeva exactly what he had heard from Narada. And Shukadeva was going to repeat the same statements as he had heard them from Vyasa. That is the way of Vedic understanding. The language of the Vedas can be revealed only by the above-mentioned disciplic succession, and not otherwise. There is no use in theories. Knowledge must be factual. There are many things that are complicated, and one cannot understand them unless they are explained by one who knows. The Vedic knowledge is also very difficult to know and must be learned by the above-mentioned system, otherwise it is not at all understood. Shukadeva Goswami therefore prayed for the mercy of the Lord so that he might be able to repeat the very same message that was spoken directly by the Lord to Brahma, or what was directly spoken by Brahma to Narada. Therefore, the statements of creation explained by Shukadeva Goswami are not at all, as the mundaners suggest, theoretical, but are perfectly correct. One who hears these messages and tries to assimilate them gets perfect information of the material creation. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, fourth chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Process of Creation. Haribol. Good. We'll pause there. Let's take reflections. Anything that you thought was interesting that stood out, that I repeated from the purports and the verses that you thought of, or questions or comments?
I love that part of the purport where Prabhupada was speaking about how the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, this whole movement, was created to help facilitate a change of heart in people.
And then he also said, though the politicians may stay in their positions because devotees are not interested in that kind of thing, they just want to offer their guidance so that those who are in the ruling class will not mislead in the name of so-called non-sectarianism to create just another material culture. They want people to have facility to be able to practice bhakti, which is the birthright. Yeah. Powerful purport.
I really appreciate how it is iterated and reiterated that anyone who is willing to listen to a bona fide master and to follow principles can become a devotee. So it's wherever they come from, whoever they are, gender, whatever, doesn't matter, which is, very important in this world. Because a lot of
It's
times it's
critically
like,
important.
you're qualified, but no, you don't have the right birth and you don't have the right sex, you're not this or that. So it's very, very important that it's not just buried in a purport somewhere. It is explicitly stated in several places, which is really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's repeated a dozen times in that one purport, and that's just an emblematic of Prabhupada and the science, which is unchanged. It's not an exception. This is very much the standard. 932 Bhagavad Gita says the same thing. Krishna says, anyone who takes shelter of me, they're born of low-born Shudra merchants, or if they're women or anything else, they come to the highest destination too. And the qualifications even to teach are made very clear that Vipra Kibanyasi Shudra Kenai, Jai Krishna Tattvaveta She Guru Hai. Anybody who knows the science of Krishna, whatever their background, they're a guru. They are a guru. So,
and this was stated by Krishna to Brahma, and through this succession, it's not changed, which is really wonderful.
Yeah. Material qualifications are necessary for material things. Spiritual qualifications are necessary for spiritual things. So if you're a soul, you're qualified, and you are. If you can hear this, you are. You're sentient. It helps to be human. We have a developed enough brain. It helps. Otherwise, no problem. Even non-humans, we can see there are pastimes. Empowered devotees or Krishna himself will liberate, give prema even to a non-human, or at least you can give them prasadam, let them come back as a human in their next life.
I always think of watching in the Govardhan Eco Village watching. There's always one dog that's always sits down in front of Raghunath Swami as he's lecturing and just sits there and watches. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
probably going to be all pretty.
Who knows who that dog really is?
Yeah.
Not an ordinary dog. Yeah. Thank you. Any other reflections or questions, Tanya?
I love how when asked all these, the questions, when asked, tell me about creation, in the material world, normally someone would be like, oh, I know that one. Here, I'll tell you all about it. But he stops and says, let me pay my respectful obeisances to the Lord again and again and again and again and again. And then basically kind of praise that he does it well enough that he would be, that he does it uh, properly, you
Yeah.
know, through the disciplics and succession, and articulates it well, and really doesn't take any credit for that knowledge at all. Like he just is extremely humble, which is very different than what at least we're used to now in the material world. Because if you ask somebody now, they'll be, they come across as a
Ooh, I
know-it-all.
know,
Like,
I
oh,
know,
I
I know.
know this one. I'm going to tell you. Let me tell you all about it. Sit down. Let me tell you. Like it's not. I like the humility of the way that he approached that.
Yeah, me too. Extensively, and Prabhupada, he put it nicely in the purport to the last of the prayers, where he said that Shukadev was praying to represent the message perfectly as it had been passed down from Brahma to Narada, who he's going to quote. Like he says here, and this is where we leave off. He says, actually, the question you're asking has already been asked by Narada to Brahma, and so I'll tell. In other words, I'm going to tell you what what Brahma said to his student, and so he's trying to get out of his own way. This is the mentality of a disciple, is that I am bequeathed this great wealth of knowledge, and it's bigger than me, it predates me, and I'm also purified by remembering it and talking about it. I don't want to be putting myself in the middle as anything but a transparent medium. Let it flow. Let it flow clear and straight, and without any alteration. So it was also notable to me how careful he was. Like you said, like so many verses over and over again, like the Lord, who is the Lord of this, the Lord of that, like may He please purify me and let me be an instrument for His service. And the message I'm about to convey in my answer to you, yeah, very instructive.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have one more reflection, or are we done for the night? If we're done, then congratulations, we finished chapter 4. Please reflect in the WhatsApp chat so we can purify that app and the sound waves and the ether with your reflections of anything you heard from the verses or purports, or from each other and your own practice or anywhere else, and on this 4th chapter, the process of creation. And the nitty gritty of that creation is going to be gotten into more in the next couple of chapters, 5 and 6, if I recall correctly. And we'll get into that soon. So see you on WhatsApp. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you also to the YouTube crew. Hare Bol.
Hare Bol.